There's more to her story than we ever imagined. That's what Miguel, the priest's nephew, whispered as he stepped out of the car, clutching a dusty box wrapped in velvet. We thought the past was buried. We thought justice had already been served. We rebuilt our lives on the ashes of old secrets. But that night under the almond trees of Casa Nueva Luz, everything shifted again. Inside that box, a locket, a sealed envelope, and a single line in delicate handwriting. For when you're ready, Mom. What could a mother possibly confess after death? What did she hide all these years, and why did she wait until now to reveal it? Stay with us, because what's inside that letter will change everything you thought you knew. The letter hidden in almond wood. The scent of dried jasmine still lingered in the air, though Doña Amalia had passed 2 weeks ago. Lucia Navarro, her only daughter, stood silently in the bedroom of the old Finca Los Almendros, the family estate nestled in the hills outside Ciudad Nueva Esperanza. The walls still whispered stories of generations, but today they echoed with something colder, silence and secrets. Lucia had returned home only for the reading of the will. Her father, Don Eliseo Navarro, barely spoke a word during the funeral. Her brother Cristobal had kept to himself, locked in the study, like he was hiding from something or someone. While going through her mother's drawers, Lucia stumbled upon a wooden box carved with almond branches, the kind her mother used to keep hidden behind family portraits. Inside, wrapped in a pale blue ribbon, was an old leather-bound Bible. Pressed between the yellowing pages of the book of Isaiah was a single envelope. Her name was written on it in her mother's elegant script. Lucia hesitated. Her heart thudded loudly in her chest. With trembling hands, she opened it. My dearest Lucia, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. Forgive me for the silence I've carried all my life. But the truth is, you are not your father's only child, and your brother is not who he says he is. Go to Santa Lucia del Valle. Find Padre Tomas Serrano. He knows everything. Amalia Lucia felt the floor shift beneath her. Another child, her whole life she had known only Cristobal as her older brother, cold, ambitious, and obsessed with the family business. He had always treated her like a guest, not a sibling. But to think there had been a secret brother, a child her mother had hidden from everyone, including Don Eliseo. That night, unable to sleep, Lucia stepped out into the courtyard. The air was still. The wind seemed to hold its breath. Through the open window of her father's office, she heard voices. She's digging too deep, said Cristobal's voice. She found the letter, didn't she? Don Eliseo muttered. Should have burned it years ago. If she reaches the priest, it's over. Then stop her before she does. Lucia froze. They knew. They were hiding something. And now they were plotting to stop her. Her breath caught in her throat. She stepped back quietly and slipped into the darkness of the garden. The almond trees stood like silent witnesses to a secret buried too long. The next morning, Lucia packed her mother's rosary and left early, telling no one. She drove alone for hours through winding country roads until she reached Santa Lucia del Valle, a tiny village where time seemed to have stopped. The church bell rang gently as she entered the old stone chapel. It smelled of old wood wax and forgotten prayers. Sitting in the front pew alone was Padre Tomas Serrano, white-haired and calm, as if he had been expecting her. You look just like your mother, he said, his eyes soft but filled with something deeper regret. Did she tell you? Lucia asked, holding the letter tightly in her hand. He nodded. Then it's true, her voice cracked. Padre Tomas took a long breath. Your mother loved both her children, but the world your father came from, it didn't leave room for mercy. Lucia's eyes widened. You mean my brother Cristobal? The priest shook his head slowly. No, Lucia. Cristobal is not your only brother. There is another. One your mother was forced to give away. A boy who grew up never knowing the truth, raised by strangers carrying your father's blood, but never his name. Lucia's chest tightened. Is he still alive? He is, but he lives far from here. He doesn't know who he is. Padre Tomas pulled out an old photograph, faded, creased, but Lucia could see the boy clearly. Brown eyes like hers, a solemn face. A name was scribbled on the back, Gabriel Ortega, and suddenly Lucia knew. She had to find him. She had to know the truth, but she also knew if her father and Cristobal were willing to keep this buried, they might do anything to stop her. Lucia sat behind the wheel of her rental car, gripping the photo like it was the only anchor she had left. The name Gabriel Ortega kept echoing in her mind. The priest had been clear Gabriel was her half-brother, abandoned, hidden, erased. And if she didn't find him soon, someone else might get to him first. She punched the name into her phone, searching through social media registries, anything. But Ortega was a common surname, and there were too many Gabriels. Still, she followed the only lead Padre Tomas gave her, a social worker's address in San Miguel de la Sierra, who once cared for abandoned boys in the early 90s. By the time Lucia reached San Miguel, the sky had turned heavy with clouds and the streets shimmered with the threat of rain. The old social worker, Senora Elena Rivas, greeted her cautiously at the door of a faded yellow house. "You're looking for Gabriel?" she asked, voice brittle with age but eyes still sharp. Lucia nodded. "He was my mother's son. My brother." Elena's face softened. "Then you need to sit down." Inside, among dusty photo albums and worn furniture, Elena told her the story a boy dropped at the orphanage in the dead of night. No birth certificate, no explanation, just a gold crucifix in his pocket and a note that read, "Protect him from Eliseo." Lucia's blood ran cold. "From my father," Elena nodded. "He was terrified even as a child, but brilliant, quiet. He left at 16, disappeared without a trace." Lucia felt tears sting her eyes. "You don't know where he went?" Elena reached for a drawer and pulled out an old postcard, Madrid skyline, postmarked 4 years ago. "No return address. Just one sentence, I'm alive. I hope someone remembers me. G. Madrid." Lucia booked a flight that night. In Madrid, the trail led her to a small bookstore tucked between a cafe and an art supply shop in La Latina district. She walked in, heart pounding, and saw a man behind the counter, mid-30s, quiet, dark-haired, absorbed in reading. "Gabriel Ortega?" she asked softly. The man looked up. His eyes met hers, and for a moment something flickered. Recognition. Confusion. "I'm sorry," he said gently, closing his book. "Do I know you?" Lucia reached into her purse and pulled out the photo Padre Tomas had given her. "You might not know me, but I think I know who you are." He stared at the photo. Then slowly he sat down. "I haven't seen this in over 20 years, he whispered. Lucia sat across from him, struggling to hold her emotions. "Gabriel, my name is Lucia Navarro. Your mother was mine too." The silence between them was thick, almost unbearable. "My mother?" he repeated. "You mean Doña Amalia?" Lucia nodded, her voice trembling. "She wrote me a letter before she died, told me about you, said she loved you but she had to hide you to protect you from our father." Gabriel's jaw clenched. So she did remember. I always wondered. He pulled out the same gold crucifix Elena had mentioned. This was all I had of her. I thought maybe it was a lie or a cruel mistake. Lucia reached across the table. It wasn't. Tears filled his eyes. "Why now?" "Because they know," Lucia whispered. "My father and Cristobal, they know I'm looking for you, and they're afraid." Gabriel leaned back, his face hardening. "Because if I return, I can claim what's mine." Lucia nodded. "The inheritance, the land. But more than that, the truth." Gabriel looked away. "I'm not sure I want any of it." Lucia's voice broke. "Then do it for her, for our mother. Don't let them bury this forever." Just then the door creaked open. A man in a leather jacket stepped inside. He didn't browse the shelves. He didn't speak. He just looked at Gabriel. Then at Lucia. Gabriel froze. "That's one of my father's men." Lucia grabbed his hand. "We have to go. Now." They escaped through the alley, weaving through the narrow streets of Madrid as the rain finally began to fall. Soaked, breathless, they ducked into a hidden courtyard. Gabriel pressed his back to the wall. "He found me. After all these years." Lucia turned to him, defiant. "Then we make this public. We go back. We tell the truth. We expose everything." Gabriel looked at her, his sister, his blood, his last connection to the woman he barely remembered, and he nodded. But they both knew this wouldn't be easy. Returning to Finca Los Almendros would mean walking straight into the lion's den, and this time not everyone would walk out. The morning they returned to Finca Los Almendros, the sky was heavy with clouds, like it too held its breath. Lucia stood beside Gabriel just outside the iron gates of their childhood home. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. This was purpose. This was reckoning. Inside the estate was quiet, almost too quiet. Servants avoided eye contact as if they knew something unholy had begun to stir. Gabriel adjusted the collar of his jacket, eyes scanning the property. "It looks smaller than I remember," he murmured. Lucia didn't answer. She was already watching for her father, Don Eliseo Navarro, and her half-brother Cristobal, two men who had ruled this land through secrets and silence. They didn't wait long. Don Eliseo emerged from his study flanked by Cristobal and two security guards. His eyes widened when he saw Gabriel. "So, the ghost returns," Eliseo spat. "You should have stayed buried." Gabriel didn't flinch. "I was buried by you. But your daughter, your true daughter, dug me out." Cristobal stepped forward, smirking. "You think you can just walk in here and claim what's not yours?" Lucia stepped up, her voice ringing clear. "It is his, and I've brought proof." She opened her folder and threw it on the table between them. DNA results, adoption records, a notarized letter from Padre Tomas. Eliseo's face turned pale. "Where did you get this?" "From the same place your conscience died," she said coldly. "From the people who cared more about Gabriel's life than you ever did." Gabriel looked his father in the eye. "I don't want your money, I don't want your land, but I will clear my mother's name, and I will no longer let you erase mine." The guards shifted uncomfortably. Even Cristobal looked unsure now. "You're bluffing," Eliseo growled. Lucia pulled out her phone and played a voice recording, Padre Tomas confessing everything. Names, dates, hush payments. The conspiracy to hide Gabriel's existence, the bribery that kept it buried, the silence that followed was crushing. "Until I think it's time we leave." A new voice cut through the tension. It was Senora Elena Rivas, stepping in with two lawyers behind her. "And let the courts decide." Weeks passed. The news spread like wildfire across Jerez de la Frontera. The story of a long-lost son, a family cover-up, and a daughter who risked everything for the truth. The court moved fast. Don Eliseo was stripped of public titles. Cristobal fled the region to avoid further investigation. The estate was divided legally, and Lucia voluntarily transferred half of her share to Gabriel, not out of obligation, but love. They didn't throw parties. There were no dramatic speeches, just quiet moments of healing. One morning, Gabriel stood in the courtyard, planting almond trees with Lucia. "You know," he said, brushing dirt from his hands, "for the first time in my life, I feel real." She smiled. "That's what truth does. It plants roots." They turned as a young boy ran into the courtyard, Diego, Gabriel's son, laughing as he chased a paper kite through the breeze. Lucia knelt. "Come here, Diego. Want to hear a story about your grandmother, Amalia?" He nodded eagerly. And as the kite danced above them, Lucia began to tell a story, not one of betrayal, but of love found again, of wounds healed, of a family that refused to stay broken. Months later, the sign at the estate changed. Finca Los Almendros became Casa Nueva Luz, the House of New Light. Gabriel opened a small literacy program for orphan children. Lucia partnered with local universities to offer scholarships in her mother's name. Justice hadn't come with vengeance, it had come with light. Quiet, steady, life-changing. And in every corner of that home, there was no longer the weight of secrets, only legacy. The morning sun lit the tiled rooftops of Casa Nueva Luz, casting golden hues on the courtyard where Gabriel, Lucia, and young Diego tended to the almond trees. What had once been a fortress of silence now felt like a sanctuary of purpose. But peace, Lucia had come to learn, wasn't a final destination. It was a choice made over and over again. Since the court ruling, much had changed. Gabriel no longer hid behind shadows. His name had been cleared publicly. The town that once whispered behind his back now greeted him with handshakes and respect. Lucia, once seen only as the good daughter, had become a quiet force in local politics, advocating for transparency and education. Still, some wounds bled in private. "I saw him today," Gabriel said one afternoon, standing beneath the olive tree in the back field. Lucia looked up from the paper she was reviewing. "Who, Cristobal?" he said quietly. "At the old chapel." Lucia froze. What did he say? Nothing. He looked older, lost, like someone searching for a version of himself that never existed. They stood in silence. Then Lucia asked, "Do you hate him?" Gabriel shook his head. "I used to, but now I think I just pity him, and maybe that's how I know I'm free." Lucia reached for his hand. Then let him carry the past. We'll carry the future. Weeks later, on a crisp Sunday morning, Gabriel was hosting the first public event at the estate's new literacy center. It was named La Sala Amalia in honor of his mother. Children filled the space with laughter, their small hands gripping books coloring pages in poetry. Local musicians played soft guitar melodies while guests sipped tamarind tea beneath hanging lanterns. Lucia watched Gabriel move through the crowd, not with the stiffness of a man on edge, but with the warmth of someone who finally belonged. She found herself drawn to a small painting near the entryway. It showed two almond trees growing from the same root, twisting upward in different directions, but always reaching for the light. A hand touched her shoulder. "Gabriel, you like it?" he asked. She nodded. "It's beautiful. It's us," he whispered. Lucia blinked back tears, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming fullness of it all. That night, after everyone had gone and Diego had fallen asleep with a book on his chest, Lucia and Gabriel sat under the stars. "I was thinking," Lucia began, her voice quiet, "maybe we should reopen the vineyard." Gabriel raised an eyebrow. "You mean turn this place back into what it once was?" "No," she smiled. "Turn it into what it could be, a place where stories grow, not secrets." He considered it. "With you here, anything is possible." They clinked their glasses together, almond milk and red wine, a strange but perfect pairing. But just as they were leaning into each other, a car pulled into the long gravel driveway. Headlights sliced through the dark. A silhouette stepped out, slow, hesitant. Lucia stood. "Are we expecting someone?" "No," Gabriel said. As the figure approached the porch, light caught his face. It was Padre Tomas's nephew Miguel, holding a faded box in his arms. "I didn't know where else to go," Miguel said, his voice hoarse. "I found something in the parish archives. Letters, old journals, from Amalia." Gabriel froze. Miguel placed the box down. "There's more to her story than we thought. A lot more. And I think it's time you knew everything." Lucia looked at Gabriel. His hand trembled as he opened the lid. Inside, wrapped in velvet, was a locket and a sealed envelope with one line written in delicate cursive Spanish: "Para cuando estés listo, mamá." For when you're ready, Mom. And just like that, their journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. Do you believe that healing can begin after justice is served? Would you open the letter if it were addressed to you? Share your thoughts below, and if this story moved you, comment 100 and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to share this story with someone who believes that the truth may hurt, but it also sets us free.